On today's show, the Portland Trailblazers are the wild card in this year's NBA draft. Should they keep the third overall pick and add a young piece to their backcourt of Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe, or should they trade the pick and get some veteran support for Damian Lillard? We're going to break it all down for you and all the different possibilities coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Next game, how about Nikola Jokic to score more than 26.5 points? What about Bam Adebayo to have less than 10.5 rebounds? How about Jimmy Butler to have more than 6.5 assists? Or what about Jamal Murray to have less than 4.5 three-pointers made? So what is Prize Picks? It's daily fantasy sports, but how does it work? Basically, you pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times back on your money on any entry that you submit. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That's the NBA Finals, NFL, MLB, NHL. They've got you covered for all the action. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that simple. They're safe. They offer fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. And right now, during the NBA Finals, one PrizePicks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire, but you have to download the app to find out how. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That means if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Blazers, Mike Richman, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcast, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Blazers. And Mike, we are 10 days out from the NBA draft, and the Portland Trailblazers are kind of the wild card of this year's draft, right? There's a lot of question marks about what they should or shouldn't do with that number 3 overall pick, and that's, I think, kind of where the draft really starts, if you will. So let's start there. Should the Blazers be looking to hold on to that pick, or should they be looking to deal that 3rd overall pick in a trade? And we'll kind of unpack from that point moving forward.
I am firmly in the make the pick camp. They probably shouldn't have found themselves in this position, but it is so hard to trade a 3rd pick in the NBA draft for value. Even the trade targets that they might be after, there's a very good chance you end up regretting it. So I think while they might end up trading the pick, because they don't care what I say, I'm just a podcast host, but I think I am firmly, if they do call me up, they got my number, they can, I am firmly in the keep the pick. I'm firmly in the keep the pick camp.
Okay, and you talk about, trying to get fair value, that kind of thing, if you're looking at trading the pick, but so much of the it kind of feels like, right, things are angling towards running things back with Dame and trying to retool, reload around him, all that. So why, why do you find yourself in the keep the pick camp? How vehemently against the idea of, trading the pick are you specifically? Like, why are you so much against it, I guess?
Oh, I mean, I don't care. but when they so the Blazers have tanked the last 2 seasons super aggressively. They're 6-40 after the All-Star break over the last 2 seasons. I'm going to say that again for the listeners who are new to the program. 6-40, y'all. 6-40. So they've really gone this route the last 2 years. And last year when they got the 7th pick in the draft, I was very much in favor of them trading the pick. When they drafted a really good 19-year-old in Shaedon Sharpe, they started this second timeline, the young timeline. They were bad again this year, somewhat on purpose, somewhat just kind of fell into being not very good and then pulled the plug really aggressively again. Once they started the timeline, I think you got to just stick to it. You can't do both. And they want to do both, right? They want to build around Dame. They want to trade this pick and something else for a star and become a championship level team, but that they want to hold on to Shaedon Sharpe. You can't do both. So what I believe, if you keep the pick, you begin this, you just admit what it is. And whether Dame's involved or not, you have to say, last year we started this we started this progress. We took this path. We have to stay on it, because if you don't and you punt, you get caught in this sort of mediocre middle after 2 seasons of being super bad on purpose.
Yeah, you don't want to be where, the NBA treadmill of mediocrity, if you will. So you say whether Dame is a part of this or not, does that mean, should the Blazers be looking at ending the Damian Lillard era? Or you talk about them trying to do both, right, and trying to hold on to him, but in a perfect scenario, you could reload and kind of restart, or I guess, jump into the rebuild, head first by dealing Dame if there's a deal out there that they think is, the right deal, obviously,
right,
and kind of jumpstart the rebuild that way.
I think that's the problem, is that if there was an obvious suitor that had a package that made sense, then it would be much easier to say, go for it. If there isn't an obvious suitor, the Knicks got their point guard. Sorry, Stephen A., but they went a little early on it. There's no other sort of like borderline contender type team that needs a really good 33-year-old, right? Like there isn't that team that needs, maybe Phoenix feels like they need that, but they can't afford it anymore. Things done changed. So there isn't an obvious path for Dame. And I actually am okay with saying, like, get another really good 19-year-old, start that, and have Dame be part of it for as long as he wants to be. The problem is, and the variable here is, that Damian Lillard might not be super into that, right? Like he has been at exit interviews said, I don't, that's enough for 19-year-olds. If they go that route, that's not my route. I think there's been some sort of, if just reading the tea leaves of the last couple of days, I don't think that has really changed. The Blazers have changed their tune though. They're saying, you're going to wow us to trade the 3rd pick. So I think they're caught in this really awkward spot. The right thing to do, and I think they know it, their front office, is to make the pick. And then the right thing to do is probably also to not trade Dame because there's not a good package for it. And then you end up in a very strange place with 2 good players under 21 that you've drafted in the top 10 in the last 2 years, and a franchise icon who's going to turn 33 a month from now. Happy birthday, Damian Lillard, who really wants to go for it. And that puts you in this strange spot.
And being in that strange spot, now it doesn't necessarily mean, even if there's not a trade for Dame on the table this offseason or ahead of the NBA draft, right? We see the NBA landscape, it changes so drastically, so quickly all the time, right? There might be an offer out there 3 months from now that doesn't currently exist, right? A team really feels like they want to push all their chips in, whatever. But if you're the Blazers and you are stuck in that awkward position of, okay, we haven't been able to find a package for Dame, but we also really want to make this pick because we think there's, a really talented 19-year-old, 20-year-old, whatever prospect to be had at pick number 3.
Scoot's 20 or whatever. So's Brandon Miller. They're 20. I'm just using 19 as a place filler.
All right. Now let's say, again, there's a lot. It feels like a lot of the speculation is saying Brandon Miller's going to be off the board by the time Blazers are on the board at number 3. How it makes it even more of an awkward fit if you take a Scoot Henderson, because then you're not only drafting another, young player that Dame maybe, might not be too fond of, but then you're drafting him at Dame's position. Is there a world where those two guys can actually coexist, where Scoot's development isn't hampered if the Blazers pick him? Or is there a world where they try to have their cake and eat it too, and maybe they grab, a Cam Whitmore or an Asar Thompson because that's a young guy with some upside, good prospect, but also kind of fits in next to Dame as well?
Yeah, I think if you keep 3, you draft the best player. Like you don't draft for fit with Dame in mind, right? Like if you have 3, you pick the best player at 3. And if you think Scoot Henderson is the best player at 3, which I think is sort of the consensus, I'm not like a big draft nut, but I think that's the consensus. I think you go with it. The problem isn't just Dame. The problem is Anthony Simons. The problem is Shaedon Sharpe. Now you've got 4 very good guards, or at least like potentially very good guards, right? Like Scoot might not be very good in October, but he's like has potential to be a very, very good basketball player. Anthony Simons, pretty darn good at 23. Shaedon Sharpe, shades of being very good at 20. It just, is there a world where Scoot can coexist with Dame? Sure. But there's not a world where all 4 of those gentlemen can go into camp. So I think the most likely scenario is that the Blazers draft at 3 who's ever available. If it is Mr. Henderson, then sure, so be it. And then they try to flip Anthony Simons in their second first-round pick, 23, for something. The problem is, if I know that, so does everyone else. And when the Blazers call, you say, hey, call me when 3's on the board. I'm not interested in 23. I'll talk to you soon.
What will the Blazers ultimately do with that number 3 overall pick? Will they trade it for an established player? Will they ultimately wind up making the pick? Of course, you'll have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Blazers. Mike, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
I cannot wait till this is over, Jackson.